The sun hovered low over the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the pristine sand. A canopy of white fabric swayed gently in the breeze, held in place by flower-covered arches that framed the altar. Laughter from the seated guests filled the air. High society figures dressed in designer suits and pastel gowns, clinking glasses of champagne and smiling under their sunglasses. Everything was perfect. A destination wedding crafted with a meticulous hand, curated guests, an exclusive beach resort, and an atmosphere that screamed wealth. But amidst the perfection, something shattered. Silently in the background, a little girl, no more than 8 years old, walked down the aisle holding hands with an older man in a navy tuxedo. Her white dress billowed with each reluctant step. Her face was empty. Her eyes weren't glowing with joy like the others. They looked trapped. Emily Harlow. Emily wasn't supposed to be there. She didn't receive an invitation. She didn't belong in this world of manicured smiles and private beaches. She was there by accident, if accidents exist. She had come to Clearwater Beach chasing a lead, following a trail that had grown cold more times than she could count. Her daughter Isabel had vanished 4 years ago, and Emily had burned every dollar, every relationship, every piece of herself trying to find her. That morning she had planned to follow a yacht rumor. Instead, her feet took her to the sand, to this wedding she was never meant to see. And then she saw the girl. The camera of her phone was already in her hands. She zoomed in, her breath catching in her throat. Her fingers trembled. She was shaking so hard she could barely focus the lens, but the image was unmistakable. That face, that nose, those eyes, blue like the ocean that now mocked her, calm on the surface while a storm surged beneath. Isabel, 4 years older but unmistakably her. The way she held her hand awkwardly, the way her lips pressed into a tight line. Emily knew that expression better than anyone. It was the same one Isabel had when she was nervous before a school recital. It was the same look she gave when she hated the dress she was forced to wear for a picture day. There was no doubt that was her child. A scream built in Emily's chest, but she swallowed it. The world around her blurred as tears filled her eyes. She blinked, struggling to hold on to the moment. She wanted to run, to yell, to crash the ceremony and pull her daughter into her arms, but her legs wouldn't move. She stood frozen in the sand, feeling like the world had shifted off its axis. Her phone slipped from her hand and landed softly on the beach, screen down, half buried. The wind tugged at her jacket. No one noticed her. Everyone was watching the happy couple. No one saw the ghost in the back row, the mother who just saw the impossible. The man beside Isabel, his hand gripping hers like a leash, was older, wealthy-looking, and far too comfortable in this setting. His hair was grey and perfectly combed, his smile coldly confident. There was something wrong with the way he looked at her, not with affection, not like a father. It was more like ownership, possession. Emily's heart thudded wildly in her chest. Who was he? Where had he taken her daughter? Why was Isabel walking in a wedding like this, dressed like a doll, surrounded by people who pretended everything was fine? A bridesmaid passed by, holding a bouquet of pale roses. Isabel didn't glance at her. She kept her gaze straight ahead, her hand limp in the man's grip. The guests were smiling, oblivious, snapping pictures and wiping tears. To them, this was a beautiful moment. To Emily, it was a horror movie playing in slow motion. She moved her hand to her bag, fumbling for her second phone, the one she used only for research, clues, saved images. She opened the gallery, pulling up the last known photo of Isabel, age 4, pink bow in her hair, wide-eyed smile. The child walking down the aisle had the same eyes, same cheeks, same scar on her left temple from when she fell off her bike. Emily backed away slowly, scanning the area. 2 men in black suits stood by the side of the tent, clearly. Security. One had an earpiece. She couldn't approach yet. She needed to confirm. She needed proof. She turned and hurried toward the back of the beach, her fingers dialing numbers she knew by heart. But no one picked up. Of course they wouldn't. She had cried wolf too many times. 4 years of Leads, false alarms, internet trolls. They had stopped answering long ago, but this time was different. This time she had seen her. As she reached a cluster of parked golf carts near the beachside kitchen, she ducked behind one and tried to compose herself. Her breaths were shallow. Her hands were shaking. She stared at the altar again, at the little girl standing still while the bride approached. Isabel didn't move. She didn't look up. Her body language screamed discomfort. No child walks like that unless something is deeply wrong. Emily knew the signs. She had memorized every expert's lecture, every article, every behavior checklist, and her daughter was ticking every box. The ceremony began. A violinist played softly. Vows were spoken. Applause. But Emily wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on Isabel. She saw her flinch when the man bent down to whisper in her ear. She saw her blink rapidly like she was trying not to cry. Emily took one last photo. She zoomed in on the name tag of a staff member walking by. Nina, Clearwater Events. That was her opening. That was how she would get closer. This wasn't over. Not again. And then, just as the couple kissed, Isabel turned her head slightly, just a few inches, and looked directly at Emily. For a split second, time stopped. There was a time when Emily Harlow had a normal life. A modest house with a squeaky front gate, a husband who taught high school biology, a daughter who loved jelly beans and hated bedtime. But that life felt like it belonged to someone else now, someone who hadn't spent 4 years walking through shadows, chasing ghosts. After Isabel vanished, that version of Emily died. What remained was a mother with one mission: find her child no matter the cost. The day she disappeared, the police said the usual things. We'll do everything we can. The first 48 hours are critical. Don't lose hope. But 48 hours passed, then a week, then a month. The case turned cold, and everyone moved on, except Emily. She quit her job 3 weeks after Isabel vanished. Teaching 3rd grade no longer made sense when her own child wasn't safe. Her husband, Daniel, tried to stay strong, but grief carved a canyon between them. He preferred silence. Emily needed action. She became obsessed. She printed flyers, knocked on doors, talked to homeless people who lingered near the mall. She memorized every minute of security footage, convinced the answer was there. She didn't sleep. She barely ate. Her days were consumed by maps, missing persons databases, and sketchy forums. And when Daniel said he couldn't take it anymore, she didn't stop him from leaving. Love had no place in the house anymore, not when their daughter's room stayed locked like a shrine. Emily's photo became recognizable in town, not in a good way. People whispered when she passed. She was that mom, the one who never gave up, the one who was always on the news begging for answers. The local news ran a segment about her once. Emily Harlow, the face of unfinished grief. It got thousands of views, but attention wasn't what she wanted. She wanted leads. She wanted the one moment that would make everything fall into place. But moments like that don't come easy. She spent nights rewatching old videos of Isabel, trying to hear a clue in her laugh, a name in the background, a hint she had missed. She chased hope like an addict. The police labeled her a problem, not openly, of course, but Emily saw it in their eyes. Detectives rotated in and out of the case. Files were moved to storage. She was told to let the professionals handle it, but professionals failed her. So she made herself a professional. She studied criminal psychology, read case after case of missing children. She built timelines, charts, and suspect lists. She followed sex offender registries religiously. She learned how to extract metadata from images, how to backtrack IP addresses. She joined online communities of other parents, shared data, theories, screenshots. She had become her own task force. One of her lowest points came on the 2nd anniversary of Isabel's disappearance. She stood outside the mall where it all happened, holding a sign with Isabel's picture and the words, "Still missing." A few people stopped. Most just kept walking. One woman asked if she was paid to stand there. Another said maybe she ran away. Emily didn't answer. She just stood there, arms stiff, eyes burning, while the world moved around her. That night she sat on the curb behind the building and cried until her voice broke. She wasn't just fighting to find her daughter. She was fighting against indifference. Over the years, she began to collect small clues, fragments. A man seen with a girl matching Isabel's description at a gas station in Georgia. A blurry photo of a child at a street festival in Mexico. None of them panned out. But each one reignited her fire. Each time, she packed a bag, bought a bus ticket and followed the trail. Each time, she came back empty, but she never stopped. Because the worst thing wasn't the false leads. It was the silence. The silence was unbearable. At least the false hope gave her something to chase. Friends faded away. Some were kind at first. They brought dinners, offered to clean her house, stayed for coffee. But time wore them down. Emily couldn't talk about anything else. She forgot birthdays, missed baby showers. Her world had shrunk to a single obsession. People moved on. They got married, had children. Emily only existed in the context of her loss. She became someone people pitied from afar. No one called her to hang out. No one asked how she was doing. They already knew the answer. She wasn't okay. She was never going to be okay until she found Isabel. What the world didn't see were the moments Emily allowed herself to believe she might be crazy. The nights when she stared at her reflection and wondered if she was holding on to a fantasy. Maybe Isabel had died that day, and Emily just couldn't accept it. Maybe the blurry photos and vague sightings were all lies, she told herself. But those thoughts never lasted, because deep down in the marrow of her bones, Emily knew her daughter was alive. She felt it like a heartbeat, and that certainty was what kept her going. Even when it didn't make sense, even when it hurt. Emily started documenting everything. She filled notebooks, created backups, set up alerts. She learned how to file FOIA requests. She even confronted store employees who had been working at the mall that day. Some had moved, one had died, but she tracked them anyway. She followed rumors. She walked through alleys and shelters, and once broke into a warehouse that turned out to be empty. She wasn't afraid of being wrong. She was afraid of missing the one time she'd be right. Then came the beach. She hadn't planned to attend a wedding. She didn't know whose it was. But a conversation on an online thread had mentioned a strange girl, attending elite ceremonies, always under a new name, always escorted by older men. Something about the location struck her. She booked a cheap room at a roadside motel and wandered until her feet found that beach. She hadn't expected anything. She wasn't ready. And yet, when she saw Isabel, she knew. In that moment, every sleepless night, every breakdown, every dead end, it all led here. Standing behind a hedge of flowers, staring through a sea of designer heels and sand, Emily Harlow felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. It wasn't hope. It was conviction. It was undeniable absolute truth. Her daughter was alive, and she had just found her, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was going to stop her this time. Before Isabel vanished, life was ordinary. Not perfect, not magical, just comfortably, beautifully normal. The Harlows lived in a modest blue house on a quiet street, lined with maples that turned gold every fall. Emily would wake Isabel each morning with a soft knock and the smell of cinnamon. Oatmeal. Isabel, barely 4, would stumble out of bed in her fuzzy socks, dragging her blanket like a cape, her hair a mess of blonde tangles. Their mornings were chaotic in the best way. Cereal spills, lost shoes, tiny tantrums over which stuffed animal to bring to daycare. But it was theirs. Daniel would leave early for school, kissing Emily's cheek and Isabel's head with the same tired affection he had since college. They weren't a glamorous family, but they were solid. They had routines, habits, and in those rituals lived a quiet happiness they never questioned. Sundays were their sacred day. Emily and Isabel had a tradition. Pancakes first, always with whipped cream and a smiley face made of strawberries. Then a trip to the park, and finally the mall. The shopping center wasn't anything special, but to Isabel, it was a wonderland. She loved the fountains, the escalators, the small carousel near the food court. They would spend hours wandering. Emily rarely bought anything, but that wasn't the point. Isabel would point at mannequins and guess their names. That one's Katie. She doesn't like broccoli. Emily would laugh every time. It was their private world, stitched together by imagination and love. The day everything changed started the same way as every other. The sun was bright, spring was just waking up the trees, and Emily felt good. She wore her favorite hoodie, and Isabel had insisted on wearing her new pink sneakers and the white dress with blue flowers. "I look like a cupcake," she said proudly, spinning in front of the mirror. Emily snapped a photo, one of the last she would ever take. They went through their usual routine: pancakes, park, then the mall. There was no shadow hanging over them, no strange man watching, no sign from the universe, just a normal day. They entered the mall through the west entrance. Isabel ran ahead, calling out stores by their signs. Emily walked slowly, letting her daughter lead the way. They passed the pet store, where Isabel always begged to see the puppies. Emily said yes, like always. 20 minutes flew by in giggles and puppy noses. Then came the request, one Isabel had made a dozen times before. "Mommy, I have to go potty." Emily checked the signs. The restrooms were right around the corner. She hesitated for a second, looking at the hallway. It was well lit, clean, with people walking in and out. She nodded. "Go ahead, I'll wait right here." Emily leaned against the wall, phone in hand. She scrolled absent-mindedly, checking messages, smiling at a video her sister had sent. 5 minutes passed, then 6. She looked up and waited. A mother with a toddler came out. A teenage girl followed, but no Isabel. At 7 minutes, Emily straightened. She called out once, then again. No answer. Her voice grew sharper. She stepped into the hallway, knocking lightly on the restroom door. "Isabel?" No response. She pushed it open and checked inside. One stall was closed. She waited. Then she knocked. Nothing. The door wasn't locked. Slowly, she pushed it open. The stall was empty. At first, her mind tried to fill in the blanks. Maybe Isabel had walked past her. Maybe she was in the food court. Maybe she had gone to the pet store again. But every second that passed without seeing her face sharpened the edges of Emily's fear. She ran to the pet store. Nothing. She asked an employee. No one had seen her. She circled the fountain, the carousel, even the security office. Her voice rose in panic. "She's 4. She's blonde, wearing a white dress. Have you seen her?" Blank. Stares. Shaking heads. A tightness began to crush Emily's chest. Security took her seriously at first. They played back footage. There was Isabel walking into the bathroom hallway. And then, nothing. No exit. No image of her coming out. A blind spot in the camera feed. Emily asked to see other angles. Nothing showed her daughter leaving. It was like she vanished, just disappeared. She felt dizzy, the room tilting around her. She clutched Isabel's pink jacket in her hands, still warm from her body. A mall cop offered her water. A woman asked if she had checked the arcade. Emily wanted to scream. Police arrived within the hour. Questions, forms, statements. Was there a custody issue? Any reason Isabel might run? Emily answered through tears. She gave them the name of every relative, every friend. She called Daniel, who drove to the mall in a fog of denial. He thought it was a misunderstanding. Isabel had to be somewhere close. "She doesn't just disappear," he said, but she had, and no one could explain how. No witnesses, no footage, no struggle. Just a girl who went into a restroom and never came out. Days passed, then weeks. The initial media buzz faded. The missing posters started peeling in the rain. People stopped calling to check in, but Emily couldn't forget the last thing Isabel had said to her before walking into that hallway. "I'll be right back." 4 words. So innocent, so final. She replayed them every night before sleep, in that hollow space between hope and despair. That was the moment everything changed, not with a scream or a siren, but with silence. Isabel was gone, and the world kept spinning, and Emily Harlow became something else entirely. In the first days after Isabel's disappearance, everything was chaotic. Police stations, local news vans, neighbors with flashlights scouring alleyways. But in the middle of that chaos, one moment kept echoing in Emily's mind, a detail so small, so easily dismissed, it might have slipped past anyone else. A mall janitor had made an offhand comment to one of the security guards. He thought he saw a man lingering near the restroom hallway around the same time Isabel went missing. No one followed up. No report was written. The janitor didn't even remember specifics. Could have been a dad waiting. For his kid, he shrugged. But Emily's instincts flared. She asked to speak to him. She begged, actually. She tracked him down 2 days later, sitting in the food court on his break, wiping his hands on a brown paper napkin. His name was Jerry, and he looked nervous from the moment she sat down. "I already told the cops everything," he said. Emily nodded. She didn't accuse. She just asked for the truth. That's when Jerry looked around, leaned in, and lowered his voice. "I don't know if it means anything, but the guy didn't look like he belonged. Fancy coat. Kept checking his watch. No kid in sight. And then, poof, gone." He didn't remember the man's face, just the feeling he gave off. "Creepy," he muttered, "like a vulture in a daycare." Emily told this to the detectives that night, expecting them to act on it. Maybe pull more footage. Maybe canvass the area for witnesses. But their response was lukewarm. "We've got no description," one said, flipping through his notes. "Could be anyone." Another added, "It's not uncommon for people to hang near restrooms." That was the beginning of the resistance, the doubt, the subtle but unmistakable shift from urgency to dismissal. Emily felt it settle in the room like smoke. She was being labeled the emotional mom, the unreliable narrator. Still, she kept digging. She went back to the restroom hallway herself, trying to recreate the timeline. She stood where Isabel had stood. She watched the traffic flow. She noted the blind spot, where the cameras overlapped, and she remembered something else. A door just past the women's restroom. It was marked staff only. She asked a manager about it. He waved her off. Just a janitor closet. But when she pressed, she learned it led to a corridor that connected to service elevators and a rear exit behind the food court dumpsters. A shortcut, a way out, a path no one had searched. That night, Emily returned with a flashlight and her camera. She walked the corridor, heart racing, filming everything. The walls were bare, pipes exposed, the lights flickered. It smelled of bleach and damp concrete. But what struck her most was how easy it would be to take a child through here unnoticed. The exit led directly to the loading dock. One van, one open door, and she'd be gone. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't movie-like. It was simple, quiet, efficient, and it made her skin crawl. When she showed this to the police, they nodded politely. One officer wrote something down, but the energy was gone. They had moved on. Emily hadn't. That was the first time she felt the distance grow, not just between her and the police, but between her and the world. People wanted clean answers. They didn't want theories. They didn't want loose ends. But Emily wasn't afraid of loose ends. She chased them. She needed to. As days passed, she noticed other strange things. Small, scattered, but too numerous to ignore. A woman on a parenting forum messaged her privately. Her daughter had been followed by a man in the same mall weeks earlier. Same hallway, same behavior. The woman had reported it. Nothing was done. Another mother said her niece disappeared in a mall in another state, under almost identical circumstances. Blonde, young, restroom, no witnesses. These weren't coincidences. These were patterns, but no one connected them. No one wanted to. Emily began to collect these stories. She created a map, plotted the locations. She noticed clusters, malls, parks, small airports, and she noticed a common thread. All the cases were brushed off, explained away. She wandered off. She was probably taken by a family member, run away, Always excuses, always reasons not to dig deeper. But to Emily, it was clear. Something was happening, something no one wanted to see. Her family started growing concerned, not about the case, but about her. Her sister, Meredith, sat her down one afternoon and said, "You're spiraling, Em." Emily stared at her hollow. "If I don't spiral, she disappears," she said flatly. Meredith shook her head. "You can't carry this alone forever." But that was exactly the point. Emily had to. No one else would. No one else cared enough. That was the first fracture in her support system. People didn't know how to help someone who refused to give up. But through it all, Emily never forgot the janitor's words. "Didn't look like he belonged." That phrase stuck. Over time, she'd meet others who didn't belong. Men lurking in crowds. Men with too much money and too little presence. She began to see the pattern not just in disappearances, but in silence. There were people who wanted these girls gone, and there were systems that helped them stay gone. And the worst part? It all started with something small. A man in a hallway, a blind spot in a camera feed, a feeling someone had and ignored. Emily's first instinct after the police stopped responding with urgency was to go higher. She called regional offices, state agencies, anyone who might carry more weight. Each call followed the same pattern: sympathetic tones, promises of follow-up, polite brush-offs. "We understand your concern. We're doing all we can." There are protocols, but protocols didn't explain how a 4-year-old girl could vanish from a public place without a single trace. Protocols didn't dry her tears at night. She began keeping a log of everyone she spoke to, names, times, extensions. Her journal filled quickly. What didn't fill was the void left by the absence of action. She emailed news outlets directly. Most ignored her. A few replied with vague interest, asking for new developments before considering airtime. One reporter named Ken Roberts met with her. He was in his late 40s always, chewing gum, with a notepad covered in doodles. He listened, nodded, took photos of Isabel's drawings, and promised to pitch the story. Emily waited. The story aired once. 2 minutes on a Thursday night local segment. The footage showed Isabel's photo, Emily crying, and a voiceover urging viewers to call with information. It was gone before the weekend. The silence that followed was louder than anything Emily had ever heard. She started joining online support groups for parents of missing children. Some offered comfort, others turned competitive, whose grief was greater, whose pain more valid. Emily avoided those. She didn't want pity. She wanted allies. She found a handful, parents like her, who refused to accept closure without truth. They exchanged tips, shared surveillance images, and cross-referenced patterns. One mother, Claire, had a son vanish in Tennessee. She told Emily, "They say it's an isolated case. They always say that. But isolated cases don't happen this often." Claire became one of the few people who truly understood her urgency. Emily even turned to private investigators. She hired 2 across the span of 6 months. The first took her money and ghosted her. After a week, the second, a man named Victor, lasted longer. He had contacts, a certain street-smart confidence. He listened, asked questions, even revisited the mall with her. He found nothing, or so he said. But Emily noticed a change in his tone after their third meeting. He stopped returning texts immediately. He started suggesting maybe Isabel had been taken by a family member. "Sometimes the answer's not what you want it to be," he said gently. Emily fired him that night. Her marriage, already cracked, finally collapsed. Daniel couldn't handle the intensity anymore. He believed Isabel was gone. Not trafficked, not hidden, just gone. One night, after Emily returned from a vigil she had organized alone, she found his bags packed. He said he couldn't live in the past forever. "We have to start healing." Emily looked him in the eye and said, "I'll heal when she's home." He left the next morning. The divorce papers arrived 2 months later. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Grief had exhausted every tear. Even her own parents began urging her to move on. They meant well, but their visits turned into quiet interventions. They brought pamphlets from support centers, suggested therapy groups, even questioned whether Emily was losing touch with reality. One evening, her father sat across from her, folded his hands and said, "Sometimes we have to accept what God gives us." Emily stared at him, hollow. "God didn't take her," she whispered. "Someone did. And they're still out there." That was the last time she invited them over. She didn't need prayers. She needed answers. The most painful moment came when her sister Meredith called from her kitchen with wine in hand and said, "Em, I say this with love, but maybe Isabel doesn't want to be found. What if she's moved on?" Emily dropped the phone. She didn't even hang up. She just let it fall to the floor, walked to Isabel's room, and sat in the dark. That was the night she took down all the photos from the walls, not to forget, but to protect what was hers. She realized the world didn't just want her to give up. It needed her to. That was when something shifted inside her. If no one was going to help, she'd stop asking. She would investigate on her own. She started studying law enforcement procedures, learning about jurisdiction, FOIA laws, surveillance systems. She created aliases, joined trafficking, survivor forums, and even posed as a researcher for child advocacy groups to gain access to restricted databases. It was reckless, it was obsessive, but it was necessary. The system wasn't broken, it was designed to forget children like Isabel. She went back to the mall 3 times. Once, she waited outside the restroom for 2 hours, just watching. Another time, she pretended to be lost and asked employees about exits and hidden corridors. She noticed cameras that weren't there before. She noticed staff members who had been replaced. She noticed no one wanted to talk. And then came the worst part. A security supervisor pulled her aside on her 3rd visit and said, "You can't keep showing up here. It's been years. You need to let go." Emily looked him in the eye and said, "When your child disappears in this place, you can give up. I won't." She left before they could call the police on her. Every door she knocked on closed. Every favor expired. Every friend ran out of patience. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Because giving up wasn't just surrendering her daughter, it was surrendering the truth. And in a world that kept burying the truth under paperwork, apathy, and polite rejection, Emily Harlow had become a threat. And maybe that's exactly why no one wanted to listen anymore. It was a gray Tuesday morning when the package arrived, one of those days where even the air felt heavy. Emily hadn't ordered anything. She rarely checked the mailbox anymore, but something compelled her to open it that day. The envelope was small, padded, no return address. Her name was printed on the label in neat block letters, typed, not handwritten. No postage mark, no indication of origin. She hesitated for a moment, the way someone does before entering a dark room. Then, with trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside was something so simple, so familiar, that it knocked the breath out of her. A pink ribbon. It wasn't just any ribbon. It was identical to the ones Isabel wore in her hair. Thin, satin, a little frayed at the edges. Emily had tied that same kind of bow 100 times. She had bought packs of them at the corner store, always the same shade of bubblegum pink because it was Isabel's favorite. She stared at it for what felt like hours, her pulse pounding in her ears, and then she saw what else was inside, a small photograph, blurry, cropped, taken through a window, but unmistakable. A child in the backseat of a car, face partially turned, eyes visible. Eyes Emily knew as well as her own. Her hands trembled as she laid the photo on the table. She reached for her phone, took a picture, zoomed in. The image was low resolution, but the features were there. Those same ocean blue eyes, that same small scar near the left temple. The child wasn't smiling. She wasn't and crying either. She looked blank, passive. Emily whispered her name like a prayer. Isabel. The name cracked in her throat. Tears welled up, but she didn't let them fall. She needed her mind clear. This was proof, real proof. The first in years. She called the detective she used to work with, Detective Langford. Voicemail. She left a message. I received something, a photo and something else. I need to speak to someone now. No response. She sent an email, attached the picture, marked it urgent. Hours passed. Nothing. She posted the image anonymously in a missing persons forum, asking for help tracing the background, the vehicle. She got replies, some helpful, others trolls. One user claimed the car model was a black 2008 BMW 7 Series. Another said they recognized the scenery, palm trees and stucco walls. Florida. Maybe. The police finally called back. A junior officer, polite but disinterested. We received your photo. We're looking into it. That was all. No request for the physical copy. No visit to collect the envelope. Emily insisted it was important. The ribbon. It matches what Isabel wore when she went missing. The officer sighed. It could be from anywhere, ma'am. Kids wear bows. And just like that, the lead was dismissed, categorized as circumstantial, filed under hopeful mother, another incident to forget. But Emily didn't forget. She scanned the photo, enlarged every corner. She noticed a partial license plate reflected in the glass. She posted it in online communities specializing in image analysis. Someone cleaned it up using AI tools. The plate came back as a match to a rental registered under a company with no website, just a P.O. box. Another dead end, or so it seemed. Emily dug deeper. The company was linked to an LLC. The LLC had ties to 3 others. All of them led to someone named Jonathan Remington. The name meant nothing to her, yet, but it stuck. She created a new wall of connections, printed images, used yarn and tape. She wasn't being dramatic, it helped her see it. The ribbon, the photo, the plate, the name, it all pointed to something organized, not random. Isabel wasn't lost. She was held, hidden, controlled, and someone wanted Emily to know, but not too much. The envelope hadn't been a threat. It was a breadcrumb, a dare, a whisper. Keep looking. Whoever sent it knew where Isabel was. They were watching, measuring her reaction. She became consumed by the ribbon. She kept it in a clear bag, untouched, sealed. Some nights, she would sit and stare at it. It was the closest thing to her daughter she'd held in years. She debated sending it to a lab for DNA, but that required official channels. And she didn't trust those anymore. So she held onto it like a relic, proof that Isabel wasn't a ghost, that she had existed, still existed, somewhere beyond Emily's reach. Her house transformed further into a war room. She removed furniture to make room for evidence boards. She catalogued every theory, cross-referenced every name. She reached out to reporters, but few responded. One woman, a podcaster named Alina Cortez, agreed to meet. Emily showed her the ribbon and the photo. Alina was shaken. "This isn't just a missing kid," she said. "This feels like a system." She promised to dig. She even recorded an interview, but the podcast never aired. 2 weeks later, Alina ghosted her entirely. Her social media vanished. Her voicemail was full. Emily had seen this before. Someone got to her. Now every knock on the door made her heart jump. Every anonymous message was a code to decipher. She felt hunted but also alive, like she was finally close. The ribbon wasn't closure, it was ignition. It reminded her why she couldn't stop, why she hadn't gone insane all those nights staring at maps and court records. Isabel was out there, somewhere, still wearing pink, still waiting. And now Emily knew one name to start with, Jonathan Remington. The name Jonathan Remington became an obsession. Emily spent days scouring every database she could access. There wasn't much. Public records showed he was the founder of a media consulting firm that didn't actually produce anything. No photos, no interviews, no LinkedIn profile. It was as if man existed only on paper, like a ghost with a checkbook. But deeper searches revealed something else. The LLC registered under his name had financial ties to other companies across multiple states, non-profits, modeling agencies, event management firms. On the surface, nothing criminal, but to Emily, it screamed misdirection. She'd seen this kind of layering before in stories of laundering and trafficking. Her gut told her these weren't coincidences. They were camouflage. Emily brought her suspicions to the online network she'd joined months earlier. A group of parents, hackers, and citizen investigators. Most were skeptical, but one user, going by the alias Skydog42, took an interest. He claimed to be an ex-IT consultant who lost his niece under eerily similar circumstances. He offered to help dig. Within a week, he came back with a cluster of names, girls who had gone missing over the last 5 years, all between the ages of 4 and 7, all blonde, all last seen in upscale public spaces, shopping malls, art fairs, country clubs. The cases were scattered across states, but when placed on a map, they formed a chilling pattern. They weren't random. They were strategic, intentional. One case in particular stood out, a girl named Hannah Mae Turner, who vanished from a botanical garden event in Arizona. Her case had gone nowhere until someone sent her mother a necklace in the mail 2 years later. A necklace identical to the one Hannah wore the day she vanished, just like the ribbon, just like the photo. Emily contacted Hannah's mother, Rachel, through a secure channel. Their first phone call was filled with tears. "No one believed me either," Rachel said. "They said I imagined it. They told me to move on." The parallels were impossible to ignore. Different states, different methods, same outcome, and always the same type of child. Together they created a spreadsheet. They called it the pattern. They logged each disappearance: name, date, location, physical description, last known details. Soon, they had over 20 entries, 20 children who had seemingly vanished into thin air. No witnesses, no signs of struggle, no conclusive leads, and each one was eventually followed by a message, a package, a whisper. It wasn't just Emily anymore. She was part of something bigger, something darker. The knowledge was both comforting and terrifying. Comforting because she wasn't alone. Terrifying because it meant her enemy wasn't a person. It was a network. They traced one of the companies linked to Remington to a yacht rental service in Naples, Florida. The boats weren't for tourists. They were used for private events, and the guest lists were sealed. Skydog42 hacked into a few image folders connected to the rental site. What they found turned Emily's stomach. Dozens of blurred party photos with children in formal clothes, none smiling, all staged, surrounded by men in suits, faces pixelated, metadata wiped. But one image caught her. A breath. A little girl with the same posture as Isabel, standing beside a woman in a navy dress, eyes staring blankly at the camera. Emily saved the photo, enlarged it, studied it for hours. The angle made it hard to be certain, but everything inside her screamed it was Isabel, older, thinner, paler. But her. She posted it on a hidden subreddit, asking for help identifying anyone in the background. Most comments were noise. But one user sent a private message. "I saw her. Last year, she was at a wedding in South Carolina. Not as a guest, as a performer." Emily's heart dropped. Another connection, another thread. She started researching these weddings. High-end, invitation-only, usually at beach resorts or secluded estates. All had vague listings in luxury event calendars. Nothing public. No social media posts, no photography credits. But one commonality kept popping up. A company called Belle Verite Events, registered in Delaware, operated through offshore accounts. On the surface, it provided event planning for elite clients, but whispers online suggested otherwise. "You don't hire them," one anonymous blog post claimed. "You get invited." Emily dug deeper and found the final nail. Belle Verite was partially owned by an investment firm, that firm's parent company. You guessed it, Remington Holdings. The web tightened around him. She now had financial links, visual evidence, witness statements. She compiled everything into a digital archive and backed it up in multiple places. She contacted a human trafficking watchdog group, but they took days to reply. When they finally did, they said the evidence was concerning, but not actionable. Emily wanted to scream. How much proof was enough? A location? A name? A child in chains? It felt like screaming into a void. Still, she refused to stop. She had something she never had before, momentum. And then came the final confirmation. Claire, one of the mothers in her network, texted Emily a screenshot of a post on an exclusive luxury wedding forum. It showed a recent ceremony scheduled at Clearwater Beach. Private union, the description read. Flower procession by Clara Jennings. The name meant nothing until Emily saw the photo. It was Isabel, not Isabel Harlow, not Jane Doe, but Clara Jennings, a name that didn't exist 4 years ago. A name someone gave her. That's when it all clicked. They hadn't just taken Isabel, they had erased her. The day of the wedding was etched into Emily's memory like a scar. Clearwater Beach glittered under a perfect sky, with canopies flapping in the breeze and guests arriving in sleek black cars. Emily wasn't on the list, but she had already found her way in, dressed like hotel staff, carrying a clipboard and wearing borrowed sunglasses to hide her eyes. Her heartbeat matched the rhythm of her steps, steady but fast. She had done the impossible, traced her daughter to this place, to this day, and now she was here, walking among the people who had stolen everything from her. They were laughing, smiling, toasting champagne. No one knew she was coming. Then she saw him, the man in the tuxedo. He stood near the altar, speaking with the wedding coordinator, but his presence swallowed the scene. Impeccably dressed, tall, silver-haired, his every movement was smooth, deliberate, and beside him, as if nothing was strange about it, stood Isabel, or Clara as they called her now, in a pale blue dress, holding a bouquet not much larger than her hands. Her face was blank, not scared, not defiant, just absent. That frightened Emily more than anything. Isabel had always been expressive. She used to giggle uncontrollably when the cat sneezed. She used to cry if a leaf fell from her favorite tree. Now she looked like a painting of herself. The man leaned down and whispered something into Isabel's ear. She didn't respond, didn't nod, didn't even blink. But the moment confirmed something in Emily's gut. This wasn't just a random abductor. This man wasn't a pawn. He was the architect. And then she heard someone nearby refer to him by name, Mr. Remington. There it was, spoken out loud in daylight. Not a theory, not a file, a person. Jonathan Remington was real, and he was right in front of her, in public, with her daughter wearing a tuxedo, like this was just another social affair. Emily gripped the edge of her clipboard to steady herself. She needed to be smart. She couldn't rush this. She ducked behind a flower arch, watching, memorizing. Isabel walked, with him slowly, obediently, like a trained pet. Remington spoke to guests with ease, laughing at jokes, shaking hands. It was a game to him, all of it, and no one noticed the child beside him, the child with the dead eyes. Emily's fury boiled under her skin, but she forced herself to stay still. She needed more than fury. She needed evidence. She needed a way out. She turned on her hidden microphone. Her phone, tucked inside her bra, was recording everything. She moved closer, pretending to adjust a tray near the drink station. Remington was talking to an older couple. Yes, Clara's been with us for nearly 4 years now. Such a blessing. We're honored to have her participate. The woman nodded. She's so well behaved. Is she yours? Remington smiled, too wide, too perfect. In every way that matters. Emily's stomach churned. Every word was a lie, and no one saw it. The couple moved on, smiling. The mask of civility remained perfectly intact. Later, while eavesdropping near the private staff tent, Emily overheard 2 assistants discussing the guest list. One mentioned donations, another mentioned placement, and then, "She's not the first, you know." They just renamed them. Rebrand. The phrase chilled her to the bone. Rebrand, like products, like property. She stepped back, tripping slightly over a cooler, and the assistants looked up. She quickly turned away, her heart pounding. Every step she took confirmed her fears. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was systemic, ritualized, sanitized to look like privilege and opulence. Emily managed to follow Remington for nearly 20 minutes, snapping photos from behind planters, uploading everything to a live server Skydog 42 had helped her set up, just in case. And that's when she caught the next bombshell. As Remington stepped into a side tent, he removed his jacket and handed it to a man, another staff member, who Emily recognized instantly. She froze. It was Detective Langford, the same man who once handled Isabel's case, the same man who stopped returning her calls. He was smiling, laughing, slapping Remington on the back like an old friend. And she realized with horrific clarity he had known all along. The betrayal hit harder than anything before. Langford had always been cold, yes, but he had also been her last link to legitimacy. She had begged him to help, cried in front of him, sent him the photo of the ribbon. And now here he was, part of the ceremony, part of the network. It explained everything, the slow responses, the lost files, the apathy. Langford wasn't just indifferent, he was complicit. Emily's vision blurred with rage. She bit the inside of her cheek to stay grounded. She couldn't blow her cover now, but everything in her screamed to confront him, to make a scene, to drag him into the ocean and scream the truth. Instead, she backed away, fast. She needed air. She needed a plan. She ducked into a storage tent, breathing hard, fists clenched. And that's when she realized something else. Isabel hadn't once looked at Remington, not directly, not even when he spoke to her. She only obeyed, as if conditioned, trained, controlled. Emily's heart shattered, but it also hardened. This wasn't just about rescue anymore. This was about exposing them, all of them. She messaged Rachel, Hannah's mum, from inside the tent, sent a photo of Langford and Remington together. Rachel replied almost instantly, "Same man was at the event where Hannah vanished." Another thread, another connection, another betrayal. The web was larger than she imagined, but now she was inside it. She could feel it closing, and maybe, just maybe, she could burn it from within. Emily adjusted her staff badge, fixed her sunglasses, and stepped back into the light. It was time to move. The sky was beginning to shift. The soft blue of early afternoon had turned metallic, laced with hints of dusk. Emily watched from behind a row of palms, heart hammering against her ribcage like it was trying to escape her chest. The wedding ceremony was ending. Guests had begun drifting toward the reception area, led by music and the clinking of glasses. Remington was surrounded by admirers, shaking hands, laughing easily, exuding the kind of charisma only money could perfect. But Isabel, no, Clara, was standing off to the side now, alone, holding her bouquet with both hands like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her eyes scanned the horizon. For a split second, they flicked toward the sea. Emily knew this was it, the moment she had waited 4 years for. She didn't think, she couldn't. Thinking would only make her hesitate. She pulled the staff lanyard off her neck, slipped through the edge of the decorative lattice, and made her way around the perimeter of the reception. Her body moved on autopilot. She remembered what Skydog 42 had told her the night before. "You won't get another chance like this. Get her out, then get proof." And now here she was, walking directly. Walking into danger, surrounded by people who wouldn't hesitate to bury her, and the truth 6 feet under velvet sand. She cut through the catering tent, ducked beneath a serving tray, and emerged just 10 feet behind Isabel. Her daughter's posture was painfully familiar, head down, knees slightly bent. Inward, holding herself small, Emily whispered, "Isabel." Nothing. She took a step closer, heart in her throat. "Isabel," she said again, louder. The child turned. Her face froze. For a moment, it was like looking into a mirror of the past. And then something flickered, a breath, a twitch. Her lips, parted. She blinked fast, recognition dawning like sunlight cracking through storm clouds. "Mom!" The word came out so quietly it barely existed, but Emily heard it. They both moved at once. Emily reached out. Isabel stumbled toward her, bouquet falling from her hands. Their fingers touched, just barely, when a shout erupted behind them. "Hey!" A man in a dark grey suit lunged from behind the bar, earpiece glinting. Emily didn't wait. She grabbed Isabel's hand and ran. Sand kicked up beneath their feet. The world went sideways. Guests turned, some gasping, others confused. Emily barreled past. A table of hors d'oeuvres, knocking it sideways, plates crashing. She didn't care. Her daughter was in her arms. Her daughter was here. Security closed in fast. 2 men from the perimeter sprinted toward them. Emily yanked Isabel behind a speaker stand, ducking low, searching for an exit. Her lungs burned. She heard people screaming now, some in confusion, others in fear. Someone called the police. Is that her mother? What's going on? Emily kept moving. Her grip on Isabel was iron tight. "Don't let go," she whispered. Isabel nodded, eyes wide, breath shallow. She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She was surviving, just like her mother. They reached the edge of the beach where the dunes began. Emily saw the storage tent where she had first taken cover. She veered toward it, yanking Isabel along. But just as they neared the opening, a figure stepped in front of them. It was Langford, no longer pretending. No badge, just a smirk, and a hand extended like a predator, cornering its prey. "You shouldn't be here, Emily," he said. "Let her go." Emily's scream was primal. She shoved him hard, catching him off guard. He stumbled back, fell into a stack of folding chairs. She ran. Behind her, Isabel tripped, but Emily caught her. She wouldn't let her fall. Not again. Suddenly a gunshot rang out, a sharp, deafening crack that froze the world for a second. People screamed, some ducked. Emily didn't stop. She didn't look back. Another shot fired. It hit a pole near her. Head, splintering the wood. Isabel shrieked. They reached the service corridor, a narrow path hidden behind the catering station. Emily had scoped it out earlier as a possible exit. She shoved through crates, her legs aching, lungs on fire. Isabel's hand slipped once. Emily yanked her back. I turned a corner and found a golf cart parked by the trash bins. Keys in the ignition. She couldn't believe it. Divine luck or poor planning. Didn't matter. Emily threw Isabel in, jumped behind the wheel, and slammed her foot down. The cart jolted forward, wheels skidding in the sand. Behind them, a chaos, Remington yelling, Langford chasing. Another shot, the back windshield cracked. Isabel ducked. Emily drove like she had never driven before. The narrow path curved toward the service road. Once they hit pavement, she turned sharply, nearly flipping the cart. Ahead, the gate, closed, locked, with a chain. She didn't slow down. At the last second, she turned slightly, sending the cart crashing sideways into the chain. The impact threw them both. Emily hit the ground hard, ribs screaming, but they were through. She pulled Isabel to her feet. "Keep going," she gasped. They ran, barefoot. Now, across the gravel, hands bleeding, feet torn. In the distance, a small van approached. Emily waved, screaming. The driver slowed, stunned. She yanked the door open, pulled Isabel inside. "Drive!" she screamed. "Just go!" The man, confused but terrified, hit the gas. The van lurched forward. Behind them, figures appeared at the edge of the gate. Langford raised his weapon. Another shot fired. The rearview mirror shattered. Inside the van, Emily collapsed. Isabel was sobbing now. "Mum!" she kept saying. "Mum!" Emily held her tight, sobs racking her chest. For the first time in 4 years, she was holding her child, alive, breathing, changed. But here, she didn't care about the blood or the bruises or the broken bones. All that mattered was this. They had made it out, for now. The safe house was hidden in the suburbs of Jacksonville, behind a chain of non-profits and legal firms that worked with trafficking survivors. It was sparse, quiet, and felt more like a hospital than a home. But to Emily, it was paradise. For the first time in 4 years, she and Isabel slept under the same roof. There were no silk pillows or soft lullabies, just silence, heavy and sacred. Emily didn't ask Isabel for details right away. She didn't press. Her daughter was fragile, held together by instincts and habit. When she spoke, her voice was thin, her vocabulary strange. Sometimes she called herself Clara by accident. Other times she asked permission to speak. Emily's heart broke with every word. Isabel had been trained. That was clear. She flinched at sudden sounds. She asked before sitting. She didn't cry unless she was alone. At night, Emily heard her whispering to herself. In the bathroom, repeating phrases like "be good," "don't talk," and "stay still." The signs were unmistakable. This wasn't just abduction, it was programming, and undoing it would take years. But Emily was there. She wasn't going anywhere. She read books. She asked therapists. She learned what triggers to avoid, how to build trust again. And slowly, day by day, she saw glimpses of the girl she had lost. The way Isabel's lips curled when she saw cartoons, the way she held a spoon in both hands, the way she still hated peas. But outside the safe house, the world spun in chaos. The crash at the wedding had sparked immediate media attention. Guests had filmed the chase. The footage leaked online. Headlines read, "Woman disrupts elite wedding, claims child is her missing daughter." Public opinion split fast. Some called Emily a hero. Others called her unstable. The authorities were slower to act. It wasn't until Rachel and 2 other mothers came forward, each with similar stories, artifacts, and suspicions, that the media narrative began to shift. Suddenly, Clara Jennings wasn't a mystery child. She was a key to a pattern. And people began to ask the question Emily had been screaming for years: how deep does this go? A week later, an independent journalist published an exposé titled "The Clara Network." It laid out everything: the shell companies, the identical disappearances, the offshore accounts, the suspicious connections between law enforcement and event planners. Emily's photos were included, so were Rachel's and Claire's and Hannah's. The journalist, protected under whistleblower laws, had help from Skydog 42, who finally revealed himself as a retired Homeland Security analyst. The story went viral. Protests began outside police stations. Hashtags trended. Survivors came forward. Suddenly the world could no longer look away. Emily hadn't just pulled her daughter from the fire, she had exposed the entire inferno. Langford was arrested first. He denied everything, claimed Emily had gone off the rails. But under pressure, inconsistencies piled up. A hidden bank account, leaked emails, a voicemail recovered from his phone that said only "package delivered, the mother's onto us." Then came subpoenas for Remington Holdings. Their attorneys fought hard. Some evidence was sealed, but enough leaked to show financial transactions connecting their business fronts to hush payments made to victims' families. The narrative was shifting fast, from a tragic fluke to institutional cover-up. Congress called for a hearing. Human rights organizations got involved. The term designer adoption hit the mainstream. Through it all, Emily refused to be the symbol people wanted her to be. She wasn't a saint. She wasn't a martyr. She was a mother who had screamed into the void until the void screamed back. She turned down interviews, declined book deals. What mattered to her wasn't legacy. It was recovery. For Isabel, for every other child still out there. She started a foundation with the help of Rachel and Claire, its name still here. They helped track cold cases, offered therapy, pressured institutions. Emily spoke only once on video, and her words were simple. "No one listened until I made them." Isabel didn't remember everything, and Emily never asked for more than she could give. Sometimes she spoke in fragments. The man with the rings, a room with no clocks, the other girl who didn't come back. Emily recorded what she could, gave it to the authorities. But at home she focused on now. They had rituals again, pancakes on Sundays, cartoons in the morning. Emily framed the photo of Isabel on her first day back to school, a public school, under a new name, in a new town. The name didn't matter. What mattered was the light returning to her eyes. Not everyone was held accountable. Some names remained protected. Some files went missing. Justice wasn't perfect, but something had shifted. The silence was broken, and that, Emily believed, was the beginning of change. She had gone up against money, power, and apathy, and somehow she had won. Not completely, not cleanly, but enough. Enough to matter. Enough to give mothers a reason to keep fighting. Enough to make sure that Isabel would never disappear again. On the one-year anniversary of their escape, they returned to the beach. Emily stood barefoot on the sand, watching the waves. Isabel ran ahead, chasing a kite, and when she turned back, she smiled. Not the polite, conditioned smile of Clara Jennings, but the crooked, dimpled, messy smile of Isabel Harlow. And that's when Emily knew. They tried to erase her name, but she remembered. Hi, I'm Erlen, the host of Whispered Helms. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to send this video to someone who needs to see it. Someone out there might recognize a detail and help change everything.